So I have my basic rhythm beat here, basic rhythm drum line, and as you can notice, the clap is overpowering the kick. And sometimes, or mostly all the time, in rhythm, this is a thing that it's just a style. But for me, it doesn't work. So what I do is that I just grab a compressor and I sidechain it to the kick at around a slight percentage, make it go down with a 400 millisecond release and a short attack. So now it'll duck every time the kick hits. And now the kick has more freedom. Also, it's important to turn up the release, or else you're gonna get the you're gonna notice the effect of the compressor. So the release is just there to compress it for a longer period of time, so it sounds more natural. You can also apply this sidechain compression method to pretty much anything. And for this example, I have my track, The Lonely Robot. So I have the entire start, which is containing strings, drums, impacts, all that stuff, you know. And I have the vocal separate from it, so everything is grouped to the start. So what I want to happen is that I want this vocal here to be more present, to be more like clearly heard. So instead of having to boost the volume up and then add compressors to keep it, you know, balanced, I would just add a sidechain compressor to the start with the start bus that would be ducking down every time the vocal hits, but not too intense, or else the vocal would be overpowering it. Make sure to turn the makeup gain off. It's kind of difficult to tell with the skin I have right now, but yeah. I would also try to make this smoother. So the entire start is on a low pass. So whenever the low pass gets high enough to where it's overpowering the vocal, that's when I turn it on 100%. So maybe like do this and then turn it on like right there, for instance. Right here is where I could just, you know. But yeah, by the way, new Closing Hour EP on my SoundCloud. This is like the last track of the Closing Hour EP, just so you know, check it out. It'll be available on every store ever, iTunes, I hope Beatport, pretty sure not Beatport, but iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. Go check it out. It's only $9.99. Yeah. It should also be known that when layering kicks, when layering multiple different you know, sounds, especially kicks and snares, it's a pretty easy concept, but I learned this the hard way. You could do this, but it would be way better to, like, because this is the punch, and this should be kind of short, kind of a little bit shorter, because this is going to be the body of it. It's going to have more mids. So what you'd want, and since this has the attack, this has the transient, you'd want to fade this in, so it's not clashing with the original attack. Even if the original attack was mostly low frequencies, and this is mostly mid frequencies, it will still clash. So what you'd want to do is, you could cut it out completely, but I like to make it a bit more natural and just clip the original transient slightly and then fade it in. Make it a bit more natural. This also applies to literally everything else. Like, let's say I have a more like organic kick, that's what it's called, and I want and this is just going to be high frequencies, right? Even if there's literally nothing clashing with the body, you would still want to fade it in, because just to make space for everything, the body's making space for the transient, and the transient's making space for the body, and then the high is making space for literally everything else. And now we just have a more controlled, more controlled combo. But yeah, it should also be known that when you do this, because like I have low, mid, high. Since this is the low, you might want to cut out a little bit of the high end, and a little bit of the. You don't cut the mid end completely. Just dip it down a little bit, just so it's a bit more natural. But just do that. And since the mid tends to be a bit more weak than the bass, use any multiband compressor and bump that up slightly, so it's almost at the same volume. Maybe a little bit more. I think I overdid this, but yeah. Also, it really just depends on what kick you use, because kick is not working. You could also literally just do a bunch of the same kicks. But yeah. So when layering drums and stuff, especially kicks, make space for everything. I've noticed in quite a bit of tracks actually that with their drums, they tend to have a really I don't know how to kind of describe the kick. It doesn't sound springy like most kicks. Like that's very springy, which I do like. It's like modern kicks in dubstep. But some tracks like this one, Rifle Kiss by Barely Alive. If you notice the kick, you hear that original transient there? There's two things going on actually that I just realized. At least that's what it sounds like. By the way, that noise was just my air freshener. It's automatic. But anyways, so what's going on here, from what I can hear, is this. You get two kicks. You delay one slightly, like I'm talking -4, -2 milliseconds. I think they did like -3. And they actually didn't use a kick for this. They didn't do delayed kicks. I think they did delayed snare. But yeah, one thing is that when you're layering kicks, to make it, I don't want to say crunchier or punchier, but to give it an initial, like a more punchy, I guess, transient, delay things by like a very short amount. Like your limit might be -5, but then like that's noticeably, delayed. So -4 is good. -2 is my favorite, but they use like -4, which is not bad at all. But for this, but yeah, you could do that for kicks too. And yeah, you should, again, you should still fade the transient. But since this is actually the transient, like that's the punch, but this is the transient that we need. We might want to, do that. I also noticed that they didn't use a kick. They actually use a snare for this. So get any of your favorite virtual ride snares, because those are the best. I like the same ones. You can use, this one sounds good, and kind of clip it a bit so it's a little bit short, because dubstep kicks or like bassy kicks are short, and that's kind of what they went for. Again, they use a very, very like intense snare, so something like this maybe. But again, you don't want it to sound like a snare, so you're just gonna use a transient. The same applies for snares too. And by the way, since I'm horrible at explaining things, the point of this tip here is that very, very short delayed drums just make it sound punchier for some reason. So I could do like a single like snare like this and just have like another snare, which is just going to be a transient of it down here, and just delay it slightly by like -5, barely noticeable, isn't it? But I did like, it makes it slightly punchier. But again, this might not work for everything. I think it's also safe to say that you could layer literally any type of drum with any type of drum, a kick with a hat, a snare with a tom, literally anything, as long as it's not clashing. And I think that's it. That's all the tips I guess I got for now. So thanks for watching, I guess.